This day and time. What happened today, years ago.
And the sources put him squarely in that period of expanding science, but also fierce competition between empires.
He wasn't just a sailor, though, was he? The notes mention his background. Military commander.
And a mathematician.
Yeah, exactly. A really interesting mix of skills for what was actually the first official French attempt to circumnavigate the globe.
And looking through the sources is fascinating. It wasn't only about finding new islands or claiming land.
No, there is a definite scientific agenda, too. An article highlights that clearly. They were trying to nail down longitude, right? Which was absolutely critical for accurate maps back then.
Huge deal. And they were doing that at the same time as planting flags, essentially. It's that mix. Enlightenment reason meets old school power politics.
You really see that blend when they hit the Pacific. Tahiti.
Ah, yes. Tahiti. The sources describe that stop vividly, using the local greeting tayo, meaning friendship.
And that really captured the European imagination when they got back, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. It fed into all those, well, idealized notions about noble savages living in harmony with nature.
Which, of course, is a lot more about European projections than the reality for Tahitians.
Absolutely. And the complexities of that contact are right there in the notes from the Voyage, too.
Sure.
It wasn't all smooth sailing, pardon the pun.
No. I mean, they made useful observation, sure. Learned about using local plants to fight scurvy, a massive killer.
A crucial bit of knowledge transfer.
But there was also conflict, confusion over property, things being taken. Maybe just out of curiosity about foreign stuff.
Right. And tragically, the introduction of diseases. Syphilis is mentioned specifically in the sources with devastating long-term effects.
Yeah. But maybe one of the most, compelling stories from this specific voyage, tying into our theme of pushing limits.
Jeanne
Beret, yes. The articles confirm this story. She disguised herself as a man.
Incredible. To join the expedition as an assistant botanist.
And she became the first woman known to circumnavigate the globe. Played a huge role in collecting thousands of plant specimens.
Many still exist today. And one note even credits her with identifying the vine we now call Bougainville. Imagine that.
Her personal journey within that bigger expedition is just amazing, defying all the social rules of the time just to be part of it.
So when Bougainville finally got back to France in 1769, having lost relatively few men, actually, for such a long trip.
It wasn't just better charts of the Pacific they brought back. The sources really emphasize this. They brought back a transformed European image of the world.
Bigger, more diverse, full of wonder.
Yeah,
but also tangled up in these tricky new global interactions.
Right. So that's one kind of journey, expanding the physical map, pushing navigational limits, cultural encounters, all of it.
Okay, now let's jump forward. 2 centuries later. The sources take us to a completely different kind of limit.
Human physical capability. Much smaller scale, maybe, but just as ambitious.
This brings us to 1979. Bryan Allen.
The sources describe him as, an amateur cyclist? And a hang glider pilot.
Yeah, not exactly a household name before this. And he takes on this challenge, fly the Gossamer Albatross across the English Channel.
Using only human power. No engine, just him pedaling.
And the descriptions of the Albatross in our sources.
Wow. From an engineering standpoint, it's mind-blowing.
It weighed barely more than he did, right?
Yeah.
Something like 70 pounds, 32 kilos.
Just over. Yet it had this enormous wingspan, 96 feet. Over 29 meters.
Made from cutting-edge stuff for the time. Carbon fiber, mylar film, like plastic wrap.
Super thin. The sources stress how incredibly efficient it was, but also how incredibly fragile. Yeah. So you needed a pilot who wasn't just light and strong.
But could deliver that power consistently, steadily, for hours.
And the flight itself. The details in the material make it sound brutal.
Oh, it wasn't smooth at all. Almost 3 hours, apparently. He hit unexpected headwinds.
Blew him off course, right.
Yeah.
Battling dehydration, cramps, stuck in this tiny cockpit.
Yeah, and they even lost radio contact for a while. The whole carefully calculated plan, the power output needed, it all went out the window because of the conditions.
But what's really striking in the notes about the flight is just his sheer grit, his persistence.
Time and again, yeah. The support crew in the boat below were telling him, maybe you should give up. You're drifting. You look exhausted.
And somehow, the sources say, he just managed to find the energy. Pedal for another 5 minutes, then another 5.
Pushing right up against that physical limit and then pushing through it.
So when he landed on the French coast, that wasn't about engine power. It was about brilliant, lightweight design meeting peak human endurance and just sheer willpower.
Absolutely. And the sources really highlight how the Gossamer Albatross became this powerful symbol.
It showed that, okay, maybe with really clever engineering and this incredible human determination, something you thought needed an engine could actually be done purely by muscle.
It just redrew a boundary, didn't it, of what our bodies, with the help of technology, could actually achieve.
Okay, so we've seen expanding the physical world with Bougainville and expanding human physical limits with Allen. Our third journey, according to the sources, takes us somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, a different kind of frontier. The landscape of international relations. The search for justice on a global scale.
This wasn't a physical trek. It was more like a profound shift in how humans try to organize themselves collectively.
And this journey really starts or gains momentum after World War I. That conflict, its scale of destruction, it just shocked the world.
So the sources place the creation of the Permanent Court of International Justice, the PCIJ, in 1922, right within that whole League of Nations context.
Exactly. Yeah. It was part of that bigger attempt to build a new world order, one aimed at preventing another war, through diplomacy, through law.
What I found really insightful from the material was the aspiration behind the PCIJ. You know, the idea of settling disputes between countries using law wasn't totally brand new.
No, they were precursors, arbitration panels and things.
But making it a permanent international court, that was a huge step.
Monumental, really.
Yeah.
And one source points out the symbolism of its home, the Peace Palace in The Hague, funded partly by Andrew Carnegie.
Right. And nations sent gifts, furniture, artwork.
Yeah, like embedding the idea that international justice wasn't just one country's idea, it was a shared global thing.
So the court itself, how did it work? The sources say it gave advisory opinions and settled actual disputes.
That's right, based on international law, between states that agreed to bring their cases there. Now, obviously, the League of Nations itself didn't prevent World War II.
No, a major failure, ultimately.
But the PCIJ, that court, it established the fundamental idea and the basic structure for international adjudication.
And that structure didn't just vanish, did it? The sources make that connection clear.
Not at all. Even though the PCIJ stopped functioning during WWII, it laid the essential groundwork. The International Court of Justice, under the UN, is its direct successor.
So it really stands as the symbol of humanity trying to shift gears, trying to move from settling conflicts just by force
to trying to use reason and law, pushing the boundary of how nations deal with each other.
Okay, so looking back across these three, Bougainville expanding the map, Allen expanding physical human limits, the PCIJ expanding the framework for global justice. There's a really powerful common lesson emerging from these sources, isn't there?
I think so. It wasn't just about getting more territory or flying further or just creating another institution.
No, the sources, each in their own way, seem to point toward this underlying belief, a belief that the world could actually be better.
Wider, maybe. More connected.
Lighter, perhaps, in the sense of overcoming physical constraints like gravity.
And definitely more just in how we interact globally.
Exactly. The great journey part isn't only the physical act, it's the shift in what everyone thinks is possible afterwards.
Right. Once somebody sails around the world and maps it better, when someone flies across the channel on pedal power, once nations actually agree to submit to international law, you can't quite unsee that, can you?
You can't go back to seeing the world as quite so limited in that specific way. And as the sources hint, these shifts, they're often powered by ideas, by conviction, not just by muscle or force.
Which brings us back to you listening to this, thinking about these examples from history, pushing those boundaries, whether they were geographical, physical, or societal and legal. How does hearing about that influence how you think about limits?
Yeah, the limits maybe you encounter in your own life or the ones we face together in the wider world.
If these were great journeys that kind of redefined possibility back then, sparked by that belief in something more, something better, what great journey, what fundamental shift in how we think collectively do you see waiting to happen now? What shift could be fueled by a similar belief in a better future?
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history daily.